Hello, I'm Isaac Keith Martinez, and welcome to Isaac's Haunted Beard. Hey, this is the 30th episode of Isaac's Haunted Beard, and I would like to celebrate that number 30 with 30 horror films that every horror film collector should have in their DVD and or Blu-ray collection. Okay, I'm going to cheat. I wrote some stuff down. So I'm going to hold this paper and read what I wrote. Now, I'd like to explain a little bit about my choices before I read them. I'd like to start by saying I'm not going to review the films that I'm going to recommend to you. And I don't want this list to represent my 30 favorite films. That would actually be very difficult and challenging to come up with. But what I did do was take 30 movies and separate them into 3 separate sections of 10. One being the essential collection, one being obscure titles, and the third being guilty pleasures. And that's actually the collection I'd like to start with. Now, I'd like to start by saying that these movies are not movies that I personally find to be bad films. I think that I actually don't believe in the concept of guilty pleasures. I don't feel guilt for liking any movie. If a movie entertains me, no matter how schlocky or campy or goofy or dumb it is, I like it. You know, mission accomplished. That's all you have to do is entertain me. I don't feel guilty for liking a dumb movie. But I do think that the term guilty pleasure has become something that people have become familiar with. When you say, oh, it's a guilty pleasure, I don't even think people really feel like that's a person admitting their guilt. I think that they just go, oh, it's one of those kinds of films. So here's 10 films that I think falls into the guilty pleasure category. Okay, and they're not in any particular order. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 so that you know that I haven't missed anything, but they're not ranked. So here we go. Number 1, Wes Craven's Deadly Friend. Number 2, Critters. Number 3, Leprechaun. Number 4, Slumber Party Massacre 2. I do like Slumber Party Massacre, but between part 1 and part 2, and there is a third, 2's the guilty pleasure one. You'll know what I mean when you see it. I'll just tell you, there's a guy in it with a guitar that has a drill on it, and he kills people with it. And he looks like Andrew Dice Clay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. Ghoulies. Number 6, The Toxic Avenger. Number 7, Manos, Hands of Fate. 8, Sharknado. 9, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And 10, Troll 2. Like Slumber Party Massacre 2, Troll 1 I guess would also qualify, but I don't even have to explain to you the legacy of Troll 2. Troll 2 is its own phenomenon. There's a movie about the phenomenon that is Troll 2 called Best Worst Movie. That's an amazing documentary. Get that too. Okay, now we're going to go into the section called Obscure. Now these are the horror films that not everyone has heard of. Once again, I like to preface it. I don't want you to think that I don't think you've heard of these movies. In fact, if you've heard of these movies, if anything, just think, hey, like Isaac, I've heard of some of these obscure horror films. Now, there are definitely going to be people who are watching the video who haven't heard of these movies. I don't want you to feel like I am in any way making fun of you, like, oh, you should have heard about these movies. There's no, like, it's not a race to see who can find the most difficult to find horror movies first. You discover movies at your own pace, and whenever a movie finds you, that's when it was meant to happen. You know, there's horror movies that I'm actually embarrassed that I still haven't seen, even though I've seen a lot. So once again, the obscure section does not necessarily mean that what does Isaac think? That's obscure. Everyone's heard of that. don't be that way. You know, not everyone. Ask yourself, has your mom heard of it? If she hasn't, then it's obscure. And if your mom has, then you have a cool mom. Give her a high five. Okay, so here's 10 obscure horror films that you could add to your horror film collection. That's really awesome. Number 1, Highway to Hell. Number 2, Blood Diner. Number 3, Burnt Offerings. Number 4, The Legend of Hell House. Number 5, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Number 6, The New York Ripper. Number 7, Cemetery Man. Number 8, Lamora, A Child's Tale of the Supernatural. Number 9, Alucarda. And number 10, House. Not the one from the 80s, although that one's fun too, but the one from the 70s from Japan. The one that the Criterion Collection put out. There you go. Those are 10 obscure horror films, obscure to a lot of people, that are worthy of being on the shelves of any avid horror movie collector. And now we are down to the last 10, the essentials. These are horror films that every horror film collector should have, and I don't mean for these 10 films to be like, well, once you have these 10, you're done. In my opinion, it should be a lot longer than 10, but I just wanted to make 30 the number to coincide with the 30th episode, so that's why 10 equals 30. But certainly, these 10, if you had to narrow it down to 10, I think these would be the 10 that you have to have. So, if you bought, and I don't see why you would, but if you bought a DVD player today, or a Blu-ray player today, and you started collecting movies today, or you've been collecting movies a long time, and you've been collecting everything but horror, and today's the day you went, I want to start collecting horror. You should, in my opinion, I don't think you should be random with your collecting. Oh, well, you know, they have this, you know, I'll just get this, or this is on sale. In this day and age when you can order things from Amazon.com or, you know, bid on things on eBay or, you know, they have really terrific, huge stores out there that offer a lot of titles, there's really no excuse. Finding movies is so easy. It's the best time ever to collect films because they're available everywhere. So, having that said, when you start collecting a horror movie collection, I think you should start with the essentials. I think that you should start with the films where, when you're taking that little break in between the time that you just bought a movie and the next time you buy a movie, if somebody was to look at your collection and think, oh, what has he got here? They'd go, wow, he doesn't have a lot of movies, but he's got the essentials. He's got the ones that he should have. These are those 10 films. Number 1, George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. That is the film that all zombie films kind of built their style upon. Number 2, Number 2, Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. One of the greatest exploitation drive-in horror films of all time. It's certainly one of the greatest titles of all time. Number 3, John Landis's An American Werewolf in London. This is my favorite werewolf movie of all time, and I don't think I'm alone. I think a lot of people love this movie, and it's really funny too. Okay, number 4, Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. That movie's scary. I know that Freddy Krueger later went on to become this wisecracking comedian type of slasher, and it spawned this huge franchise, and it goes in a lot of different surreal directions, but that movie is scary and effective, and it holds up. Number 5, Steven Spielberg's Jaws. A shark. Water. Done. 6, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. This is an important film to see. It's a black and white classic, and it's just brilliant. It's such a I know I wasn't going to review the films, but I'm just kind of lightly touching upon the essentials. This is the way that we tell a story and we lead the viewer to believe that something is a certain way. This is your killer. This is who you should be afraid of. And what if things weren't what you thought they were? One of the original classic twist endings. And of course you got that classic, iconic shower scene. Psycho. 7. John Carpenter's Halloween. This isn't the first slasher film ever made, but this is, in my opinion, the first slasher film that made such an impact on culture that it gave birth to the boom that was slasher films, which dominated the theaters and drive-ins in the 1980s. And as a slasher kid, as a 1980s horror movie kid who lived in video stores and begged his mom to take him to movies that she didn't want to see at the drive-in and at the movie theater, I lived for these sequels and these franchises. And Freddy and Jason and Pinhead and Leatherface and you know, Michael Myers and Chucky and the Tall Man. These were my heroes. These were the superheroes of horror. And Halloween started it all. Halloween was the one that created the template, like Night of the Living Dead did for zombie films. This did for slasher films. Slasher stalks and kills horny teens. Yet John Carpenter did it with style. It's very cinematic. It's a perfect, in its own way, it's a perfect film. Okay. 8. Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead. I've gone on and on in other videos about how much I love The Evil Dead 2. I my favorite sequel of all time. But The Evil Dead, I mean, you can't have Evil Dead 2 without The Evil Dead. And The Evil Dead, once again, is a scary film. And it's a simple formula. You take a group of young people, you put them in an isolated area, a cabin in the woods, and you unleash evil on them. And spirits invade the cabin, possess the young people one by one, and they kill each other off because they're all possessed. Who will survive? The Evil Dead is such a stylish film for a first-time filmmaker, and when you watch it, you know you're watching magic, and it holds up, and it's such a great horror film. It never fails to enchant me. 9. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is a perfect film. I think it's amazing that even if it wasn't, if you just remove the word horror, it's just, forget that it's a horror film, it's a perfect film. And if you're familiar with Stanley Kubrick's work, you know that's the kind of filmmaker he is. He was a perfectionist, he was a visionary, and every frame looks perfect, and every performance he gets out of his actors are perfect, because that's what he demanded. And he had a brilliant eye and a brilliant brain for telling a story perfectly, and he does that with his adaptation of Stephen King's novel The Shining. And Stanley Kubrick made a horror film, so all filmmakers out there who take themselves seriously, who strive to be like Stanley Kubrick, should make a horror film. That's all I'm saying, make a horror film. 10. William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. My favorite horror film of all time, regarded as the scariest movie of all time. I love this movie, and I think that it is still scary after all these years, and a lot of that has to do with how simple it is. A little girl gets possessed, and to protect her from herself and the people around her, they tie her to the bed, and they bring in a priest, and they perform an exorcism. And you'd think, how much can you get out of that story? Well, you can get over 2 hours. And it's spooky because it's amazing to see a person who is innocent and vulnerable get invaded by a demon, and just have that experience change everyone around her. And all the things that, just to have like, the world goes on around you and you have no idea that there's all these crazy, horrific things happening in one bedroom, in one house. And that movie gives me chills to this day. The Exorcist. So there you go, 30 movies that you should own. And I can think of a bunch more that you should own. But we're going to leave it at 30. Thanks for watching our video. Subscribe to Isaac's Haunted Beard on YouTube. Hey, subscribe to isaacshauntedbeard.blogspot.com, read my blogs, and follow Isaac's Haunted Beard at Isaac's Haunted Bee on Twitter. Bye.